Hey everybody, Super Squee here of the Emotionally Unstable Gamer channel on YouTube, back for part 2 of Zack's big list. Just going over more shit that I've finished. So let's get right into it. So, Halo 2, I love so much. It is still one of my favorite games of all time. I feel like even just the couch co-op multiplayer is amazing. I feel like the story elements are really great. Just like it's fun to play through the story. It's not like it's any big brain shit, but it's just fun. And for the longest time, until I played the games later in the series that I never got to play, this was my favorite Halo of all time. I think I'd say the multiplayer is probably still my favorite of all time, whether it be couch co-op or like playing against other people online, just because it's very simple, but there's a lot going on that you can do. Like it's just got a lot you can to fuck with, like settings wise. And I know the new games probably have way more stuff you can mess with and create some really cool modes, and Forge mode is really cool, but it's like I feel like this is the best of being like simplistic but also like still giving you stuff to mess with. um I honestly haven't played a ton of the multiplayer in any of the other games other than like Reach, so like that opinion might change if I do that eventually. But Halo 2 is just, it's a good sequel. It's a really good sequel that I feel is far better than Halo 1 without like making Halo 1 like something you never have to touch. I think they're really good companion pieces to each other, honestly. Like, it's a good, like, if you haven't played Halo 1 and you play Halo 2 and you want to go back and play Halo 1, then that's awesome. I don't really have anything else to say other than, like, the score is pretty great, too. And it was a cool change to be able to play as Arbiter and get to see stuff from the Covenant side slash just from the Elite character side. This game, I remember enjoying a lot when I was younger. I played it originally probably shortly after it came out and thought it was really cool at the time. It was like some friend of a friend's son or something, like friend of the family's son, and he always let me play on his game consoles, and he was like a teenager when I was like an 8-year-old, so I don't remember what the actual time period was. And I think I actually watched him beat this game at some point, and it looked so cool, like all this crazy cop shit, and you got like this pet dog that was named Shadow that you could use to target enemies as kind of like a freebie to kill shit, and it just seemed interesting. So originally, God, I don't know, like a couple years ago, I played it on GameCube, and I remember having a blast. And I remember not using cheat codes or anything till the very end of the game, only because my disc was scratched. So I used cheats so that I could skip to where I was again without having to deal with save file issues. And I gave myself infinite ammo and just like ran through, because the games are very like arcadey. And then I played this version on the Xbox, which I didn't realize came first, and has no cheat code compatibility, and I think may actually be more difficult or just overtuned, because I had no issue playing it before, but now it's like I'm hitting walls left and right. And this is one of the first things that like I didn't actually finish. I gave up because it was just irritating me too much. Like, I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to waste my time on this game. I had a bunch of friends over at the time, so it was like I wanted to move on to something else that was more fun to actually watch too, because it was aggravating to watch, it was aggravating to play, and we all tried our hand at one of the levels, and there's just infinitely spawning enemies, and I don't know if that's supposed to happen or not, but it makes it really difficult. And they give you a boss character that I figured, oh, you kill the boss character and then like maybe a cutscene will happen and you move out of this area. Killed the boss character, didn't do anything, didn't understand what the hell was happening. I would stay away from this game unless you have like the GameCube version or you're emulating it and you just want to like run through it for some shooty pew pew time and like put cheats on, kind of like you're playing an old arcade game and just throwing tons of quarters in it infinitely. So fuck this game. Okay, so I love the first one, but I had way more time spent with this second game. Like, Tony Hawk Underground 2 is like my Tony Hawk's Underground. And there are parts that I feel like are too over the top, like too jokey. Like, it's like I was never huge on Viva La Bam or anything when I was younger. So like, honestly, I think this was my first introduction to Bam as a human being, as a like face of goofiness or anything. And like, I didn't know a lot about skateboarders in general. It was just like I thought it was cool, and Tony Hawk's name was on it, and like Tony Hawk was typically the skateboarder that it seemed anybody who knew even the minutest amount of things about skateboarding knew who Tony Hawk was. And so I had a blast with this. and I loved playing all the like extra unlockable characters that had weird ass vehicles, and this was the first time I saw anything to do with Steve-O as well. I really liked the character creation in this. I was going to make a character that was just someone that looked like me, and then my friends were like, hey, make Shrek. So we made this god-awful monstrosity that looks like Shrek that we named Shreckles McPoo. And he had giant, like just absolutely huge shoulders and looked horrifying and ridiculous. And we beat the entire game with him, and it was just great seeing that freak show with the tiny, like, roughly 20-year-old Max voice that comes out of him. It's just like, it's like their balls dropped, but they don't sound like a buff, manly man. And it's just like that coming out of Shrek is just like, okay. And not just Shrek, but like terrifying, like horror monster, creepypasta Shrek that someone like doodled up like bridge worms. I love this game. It does get super repetitive later on, and I found out that there's a real easy way to cheese the game. If you never add upgrades to your car, it actually has scaling with the other cars. So if a race is too hard, take off parts that make your car like super fast and crazy, and the AI will knock down their shit. But at the end, it still gets to the point where like the AI is so neck and neck with you that you're just playing the same race over and over again, and it's longer and longer, and the track gets bigger and bigger, because I believe the whole game takes place over like one giant grid map, but you race on different roads and stuff that are connected in that like map. So as you get to the later parts of the game, it will just increase the size of the map, like you're traveling more of that world, or it might be like separate pieces, but I believe like ultimately there are only like 5 or 6 tracks in this game. They just get bigger because they add on like the longer parts, and you're playing more of the level as a whole, which is really cool, but also means you're spending like 10 to 15 minutes per race, especially the ones that want you to do like 6 laps, and it's like you're down to the end of the game where it's like maybe you have like 5 or 6 missions left, but you're spending like 4 hours on it. And like, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm missing something, maybe I just sucked at the game, but I mean, I still enjoy it. I think it's one of those things that it's great to play, but there's no real like big story going on that you need to pay attention to. So it's one of those things I'd say like play a couple hours of it and have fun, but like don't try to finish the whole thing, like unless you just really, really want to. I feel like it's not personally worth it. And I haven't played the second one yet, like actually played it and finished it, because I started it and it has a really weird like camera issue that like wonks back and forth. And maybe I'll be able to just like get used to it and I'll head back to it because it looks pretty. But until then, Need for Speed Underground 1 is like my favorite in years for like Need for Speed games, just because I like the ability to customize stuff. I like that you could like change your car color and engine parts and like carbon fiber and just all that stuff. I like being able to tweak all the stuff, and like the car is basically your character, so it's nice being able to have so much variety and so much ability to just tweak the most minute parts of your car and make it your own. So I know there's a lot a lot of contention towards this. If I'm using that word right, I think I am, but I'm not sure. There are people that just hate it, just outright, which is fine. Like, if you just don't like it, but like there were people that attacked it because it's like, this is not anime, and this is blah, blah, blah. And I don't even personally care about any of that. I feel like this thing knew it was supposed to be a shit show. It's like a shit post of a cartoon. And it's ridiculous and hilarious, and I absolutely loved it, honestly. It was like, they took the campy, dumb nature of like, what the fuck, my brain's losing it for a minute. It took the dumb nature of like dubs, like old 90s dubs, but like hammed it up, where it's like a lot of these people, at least, I feel like at least half the cast have done voice acting work, or they're like higher profile actors. So they know how to do voices properly and make it sound like correct. And it seemed like some of their roles sounded perfect. Like, it sounded right. Like, I don't think this was ever like a sound director issue where they weren't getting sound direction properly on how to portray their characters or act them out. I think it was all done purposely. I think it was purposely made to be like goofy and dumb, and like it didn't work properly. Like, like really dumb old dubs from the 90s where it was like they had really bad like voice direction and it just sounds goofy as shit. And it's like a lot of us love a lot of those old anime that got dubbed because they're goofy and shit, and because like it's nostalgia. And some of them still hold up in ways, even if not in the voice acting department. But like, if you just want to have like a ridiculous time and you enjoy like dumbass memes, like just the ones that are like super weird, where it's just like or you know, random text on top of an image, shit that just doesn't make sense, then I feel like you can get a laugh out of this. And there are some great like quality, like just absolutely stupid jokes in this. There's also a Christmas special which I have not watched yet, and I'm still in hopes that we're going to get a second season, even though there's no reason to, because it's not like there's a bunch of story threads that aren't like fixed. But yeah, not remotely as bad as anyone and everyone would say. Okay, so this, I know a lot of people have problems with this, so just straight off, like, period, I mostly watch this because I love John Mulaney and I like hearing his voice. There are some genuinely, like, I think well-written jokes in this that make me laugh my ass off, but, like, as a whole, like, I don't think it's good. I genuinely don't think it's good. I don't even like South Park, but I think I like South Park more than this because it's a show that's been running longer, so it has more episodes. Therefore, there's going to be more episodes I enjoy that are catered towards me. Not catered towards me specifically, but you know what I mean. Like, there are so many episodes. There's going to be an audience for somebody with each of them at this point. And with this show, like, I hate the animation. I think it's really gross. I like a lot of the voice acting. I don't get some of the complaints that people have. Like, I feel like it's not as bad as people act like it is. It is absolutely vile, don't get me wrong. Like, there are moments that are just absolutely horrible. And, like, the first time I felt like I couldn't take it and wanted to, like, turn it off is the whole, like, subplot with the character Jay that's in the bottom left corner who, like, fucks his pillow and, like, makes a baby pillow, and that he's like having issues with his sexuality and like fucks a couch cushion or something. It gets wild, and it's like, why did we even need that? Who wanted to write that? Did the guy that played Jay do that? Because I feel like he's weird enough. He might have been like, hey, let's put in a plot for like couch fucking. And I don't want to assume. I don't know the guy, so like this is not me shitting on him. It's just like, who thought that was funny and would be enjoyable? Like, was the audience for that supposed to be younger? Because it's like, this is obviously not meant for kids, and I feel like, yeah, you're gonna have like 13-year-olds and shit that like stumble upon it, but I feel like 13-year-olds is like the bottom level of who would enjoy this. Like, I'm not saying adults couldn't, but like, if you're going lower than that, then like I feel like they're too young to like not replicate some really vile shit that's in this show, because like kids can be really stupid. They really can. Great example of why. Of how I know this, because I was a kid once and I did some stupid vile shit. Okay, so it sucks that I couldn't find a bigger version of this image, just because I feel like there's not a lot of promotional image out there for this game. I remember seeing a video and like oh, excuse me, not like a blog post, but I remember seeing like a Kotaku post or something. It might not have been Kotaku, but you know, it was like a news article thing for gaming, and it was about this game that played your own music, but it was more like I guess like a Galaga style thing where you're moving back and forth with your little ship and you're shooting beams, and like musical notes and enemy ships will form to the beat of your music. And this one actually had like a cool little interesting story. So there was actually a point where it wasn't like I made up a playlist and just played through it and said done with the game. I actually played through the story, so I had to keep getting music from my friends and stuff so I could get enough music to actually finish the game. So I can't remember how many composers there are, but it's like this demon takes over your music and decides to possess it, and they're stealing this thing called the Symphony of Souls and like corrupting and possessing different composers. So like a lot of the achievements and images for this are like old composers like Bach and Beethoven and stuff like that. But it plays off your own music, so your mileage is going to vary if you don't have a lot of your own music to play this game with. But like, you can do some wild stuff, and like I presented stuff in levels of, I asked my friends if like, hey, give me like 3 songs, and like I made them Like, hey, what would be your like theme song? What would be your boss fight song? What would be your blah blah or whatever? That way I could get like little like mini stories of their own music that they sent me. So I could like play mini levels that were about that person. And as you beat songs, each song unlocks different abilities and weapons and like just power-ups and shit that you can use on your little ship, and you can boof up your ship. And my favorite thing was, my favorite weapon is the subwoofer, because it beats with the bass of a song. So if I knew I was going to be playing like a really heavy like bassy song or like techno or dubstep or something, I just popped on like 4 subwoofers and just annihilate everything that comes across the screen, and it's absolutely amazing. I think this game is on PS3 as well as on Steam. It might be available other places. If you like music, if you have a lot of music and you want to play like a Galaga style type of game where you pew pew and upgrade your ship, like buy this on Steam. I think it's like $10. It is worth at least 20 in my opinion. Like, go for it. Like, it's awesome. I think my cat is trying to attack my chair and be noisy. Okay, so I'm not going to lie, I cheated a little bit on this one. I set up a system where I gave myself enough action points with a trainer so I could play through this game in a timely fashion and not feel like I was taking 3,000 years on it. I think I still spent like 20 hours, 25 hours, something like that on this one. I know this one's still shorter than the second one, but I made it so that I was like basically playing an action game, and I know that's cheating, but like I wanted to play this mostly for the story more than anything else. Even though I do think the mechanics are interesting, I also feel they're kind of archaic, but it worked really well for the time. And like, if I played this when it came out and I was the age I am now and I played it when it came out, I would have thought it was revolutionary and I would have like loved it even more then. But I stayed away from this game forever because I thought that it would be way more complicated than it is, and it's not. And I had so much fun. By the end of the game, my party was like a ghoul doctor, or no, that's the second game. I'm sorry. I think this one I played with no companions, actually. I think I got Dogmeat, and that was all I did. Yeah, I got Dogmeat. Sadly, Dogmeat died when I was going to the end like of the game dungeon, and a super mutant just blasted him in half, and it made me so fucking sad. And it was like the rest of the game, I wasn't like depressed, but it was like, I gotta do this for Dogmeat. I gotta save the land so that no more puppers ever have to die. And I love what they do with like text storytelling, because I'm a person that has a big imagination, so I don't mind if you don't show me something, especially if it's like an older game from this era. It's like, I understand you were constrained by the time you have and the technology you have, and I think it's a really incredible, like, it's just a really incredible RPG that I feel like was a bit different for the time. I know Wasteland came before this. I have still not played Wasteland or Wasteland 2, but I know Wasteland like happened before this. But as far as I knew, there weren't a lot of like post-nuclear type of games, like where you're at the end of the world and shit like that. It was always like RPGs that were magic and swords and shit like that. And then, I don't do this super often, I do it sometimes though, I go directly from one to the next. So I went directly into Fallout 2, and basically every issue I had with Fallout 1, like, they were minute things, but every personal issue I had with Fallout 1, they completely fixed in 2, and it was beautiful. 2 was an amazing sequel to 1. It had so much more depth, there was so much going on. I love that, like, it takes place, like, I think it's like 50 years after the original or something like that. I can't remember for sure. Or it might be like 100 years. No, it can't be 100, because one of the characters that was like a young girl, it might be 50 or 60 years, something like that. It's a decent amount of like time has passed for like more settlements to grow up and become bigger, but not enough that like you can't recognize shit if you played the first game. And I think you're the grandchild of the character you played from the first game. I love the intro to this, where it's just like you're part of a tribe that was like founded by the Vault Dweller from the first game. And like, I love the characters in this. I love the personalities they gave them. I love the voice acting for the characters that have voice acting. I love just all the little minor stories that are in this. I love getting my car. I ran into the TARDIS in this game. I believe that was in this one, not the first one. It might have been in the first one. In one of these, I ran into the TARDIS, and I was like, please take me away. It sucks here. Like, there are bad things everywhere. But this is the game that my team was I didn't take Marcus. I didn't. My team was a doctor who was a ghoul, a radio repairman who repaired other small stuff that was just this kooky old man that like got into trouble. I had dog meat. I had Sulik, who was like a tribal man, like a Native American, and he was super cool, and he used a giant hammer. And I ended up being like having a shotgun wedding, getting married to this farm girl because I slept with her one night and her dad found out and held me at shotgun and was like, "You're gonna marry my daughter and love her and take her with you." And I was like, "Okay, I like her. She has huge tits. Like, she's a nice girl." The character, from what I remember, she's kind of ditzy, but she's a cutie pie. And I was like, okay, I'll take my wife with me. And we made it all the way to the end of the game, safe and sound. And then I got to a room where, like, the turns freaked out and, like, the floor was electric. And I couldn't get her to stay where she was supposed to stay. And she got roasted to death. And I have this image of in my head of after I turned off the fence, like, she's bleeding out. And she's like, "I'm not mad at you, honey. Like, this is the greatest adventure of my life, and I love you." And she's like bleeding out of her face, and I'm just like, my character's crying, holding her, like, "No, my wife." And this game, I also love that this one, after you finish it, it boops you back out, and you can go explore and do shit like after the game is technically over. So like certain stuff that you never got to do, you can still go explore and do stuff and level up your character if you just want to fuck around in this world. And I didn't do that because I wanted to move on to more games. But it was super cool that I had the option, and that's super cool for anybody who like just fell in love with this world so much that they just wanted to keep going. Okay, so I believe from what I've put down on my little piece of paper here that doesn't exist because I put it all in my mind, this is the last thing we're going to go over for this one. So I'm not a huge horror movie person. It's weird because, like, I love horror. I think it's really interesting. I like watching horror movies, but it's like, I'm not like a huge horror movie buff. I don't like actively go out to get it. Like, I like good stories, period. I like stuff that's entertaining, period. And that overlaps a lot with horror because it's spooky. A lot of it, like, gives you unnerving feelings and makes you feel weird. So it's like, you don't want to look away because it's like, these things don't exist, but what if they did? What's that thing in the corner of my eye? I remember seeing blips of the original, like, TV movie that was, like, split in 2 parts, I believe. Oh, I got the hiccups. And I watched this with my friend Chris, and I absolutely adored it. I think they did a great job with all of the effects. I think they did a good job with the story. I feel like they didn't use bullshit like jump scares. Like, there were moments that were spooky that you could consider jump scares, but for like the most part, it's just like weird, creepy shit that was done well that like freaks you out. And I liked how they designed this version of it, and I can't pronounce his name. I believe his first name is Bill. I like him. I like him in the things that I have seen him in. And I really liked him in this. He did an absolute amazing job. And just everything about this movie, I think it's just a good horror movie. It's a really good movie, like, period. I know there are some people that didn't like this one, whether it be because they just didn't like certain things about it or they didn't like the book or whatever, and that's fair. But I really enjoyed this movie, and if you like horror movies, like, I think you can do a lot, so much worse. So much worse. I've watched so much trash. Thank you for watching, for being here for The Big List Part 2, and I hope you enjoy coming back and watching even more with me. Bye-bye.